Right, now this exercise is in mixing color on the paper. Now there's something that you have to take on board quite clearly when you're doing this, and that is when you introduce your second color to your first color, it must have more pigment in it. So it must be stronger. So the first color has a certain amount of water and pigment. The next one has more pigment and less water than the first. And the third one has even less. The other thing is that you don't want your second pigment so near to the first one in pigment strength that it gallops and fills the whole of the image that we paint. Because what we want to try and do is show a 3D elephant, if we can at all manage it. Now, it doesn't matter if you can't draw an elephant. If you get something that looks vaguely like an elephant, that will do. Because all I'm trying to do is to actually show you how to mix the paint on the paper. And also the magic of the paint fairies. Because when you get it home, you put it on one side, and if you look at it tomorrow, it looks tons better. It's just amazing. And Rachel and I reckon the paint fairies get at it when you're fast asleep. Okay, so I've got my brush, and in this case, I would like you to just watch, not do, until I've finished, and then you can do yours and take as much time as you want. If you try to paint along, I think it all gets a little bit hurried. And I don't want to hurry, and I don't want you to hurry. I just want you to try and appreciate what it is we're trying to do. Okay, so what I'm going to do is paint the whole elephant shape, sideways on view, a nice curly trunk, a tiddly little tail, and tusks sticking out, if I can remember them, because I can't draw an elephant either. I'm going to do the whole of the elephant in yellow ochre. And then I'm going to make a slightly thicker mix, a bit more thicker mix of the alizarin crimson. And I'm going to put it in at his feet on the bottom of his trunk and help it to go up the elephant, but not to cover the whole of the yellow. Just want to leave a little bit of yellow on the top of his back, on the top of his head. And then as that creeps up, I'm then going to introduce some Prussian blue. Didn't think you could paint an elephant in red, white, and blue. Red, yellow, and blue. Again, at the bottom, thicker than the red. So the red is thicker than the yellow, and the blue is thicker than the red. And again, you don't want it to cover the whole thing, so you want your elephant to have a sort of yellowy, rosy glow on his back. And then this sort of elephant color. You'll be surprised what turns out. And then I'm going to make a mix in the palette of all three colors to get a real dark. And in that case, I will make all the paints very, very thick. Okay, well, let's see if I can do a heffalump. Right, so I'm taking some yellow ochre, mixing it in the palette. And I want it quite strong. Basically, so you can see it actually. Can you see Can you see this? Right, so I'm still getting my yellow, mixing it in the palette. Right, here goes. Dear God. Well, you should say fresh, shouldn't you? I don't know who the patron saint of painters is, but there will be one anyway. So we've got his ear and his back. And they're not very big, actually. You'd be surprised how short they are. There's his tail. Then we come down here. Got a sort of haunch and a leg. I think that's probably enough. Okay. He's got a short tummy. Again, you'd be surprised how short. Bring his legs down to the same level. You can, if you like, give him a bent leg, but I think that's making life too difficult. He's got a curly trunk. Trunk comes down here, right? And he's got his mouth here. And he's got his tusks. Yeah, I think he needs a bigger. Yeah, right. So there's my effalump. Okay. It's vaguely like an elephant. Right. Now, I'm going to use the red next. It's got to be thicker. It's got to have more in it, more pigment in it. Don't forget you've got water on the paper already with the paint in it. Now, I'm going to put some in the bottom here. Tease it up a bit. No, I didn't wet the paper. See, it's, maybe I should have because it's drying fast. Now, if I can remember to leave his tusks out, that would be good. His mouth. It's actually dried off up there, wretched paper. So I'm just going to run a dry brush. Shouldn't really fiddle. Don't fiddle, Steve. Yes, fiddle, Steve. No, I should have left it. Should have left it. Okay. Leave it. Right. Okay. Now I go for my Prussian blue. Now be careful. Prussian blue is a beast. You just got to show the paint. And he takes over. It still has to be thicker than the red. I'm going to put that in there. See how dark he's gone. He will fade. See the real magic, he's got to dry. It is slowly creeping up there, as you can see. Slowly creeping up there. I don't want to entice it too far. Now, I want that to be a little less wet. It's very shiny. So if you could get that far, right, we'll then do the next bit. Right, now, it's nearly dried. It's a bit little. I should have done a bigger one so that you could all see. Anyhow, if I take some Prussian blue, fairly thick, that's fairly thick, and I work that in. I'm going to take some of my alizarin and mix it into that. That gives me a sort of deep purple. And then the other color was the yellow ochre, wasn't it? So I take some of that, mix that in. I get almost a black. It's not thick enough. It's too, because what I want to do now is to put in the put in the real shadows. I don't think you're going to see this, but never mind. Eh? So you'll have a shadow around his ear. There'll be a shadow there under his belly, maybe down the back of his leg. It's a sort of haunch here, isn't there? A little black tuft on his tail. Not that it's getting very tufty there. He's got an eye somewhere. His ear comes up there, so his eye is about there, I think. And the inside of his trunk, and the back side of that bit there. I don't know how much of that you can see. If it goes too far, just take it back. But what I did was to mix all three colors together as thickly as possible. And that gives you, and I'm using a smaller brush. I'm using a much smaller brush. Smaller brush has less water in it, and it gives you a finer point to work with. And what you're doing is just putting in where the real creases are. You'll notice I've given him a bit of ground to stand on. It just makes him a little bit more real, and it helps to bleed off some of the paint. See, just a few scrubby strokes, not a straight line across the bottom. Some of them are further back than others. Well, it's very rare that you get it off right. It's very rare that anyone gets this right first time. So you know what the principle of the thing is now. Well, it actually is a matter of the pigment-water relationship. When you put your yellow down, you're putting down water as well. So there's water already on your paper. So when you mix your red, you've got to think in terms of the water that's already there. So your red has to be quite a bit thicker than the yellow. For one thing, if it is, it won't run so far. So you'll have more control over how far up the elephant it goes. And the same is true of the blue. Prussian blue is a beast. It doesn't need much to make a really dark color with Prussian blue. And have you noticed how the red and the blue make a black? The red and the blue and the yellow make a black? That's interesting, isn't it? Because you think red and blue make purple. And they don't necessarily. Depends on which red and blue. Now you can use this technique to do people or rhinoceroses or dogs or practically anything, trees if you like. The idea is that something is catching the light across the top, and the light changes from the very bright to the slightly less bright, so from the yellow to the red, and then you get the side of the elephant in the dark. Then when you put the shadows in, you get the really dark darks later. It would be a good exercise if you tried to do this again at home, using those three colors, leaving a bit more showing of the yellow and the red, And then try in different reds, yellows, and blues. So just to see what the three colors make. If you use ultramarine, instead, if you just use the other two the same and just use ultramarine, you get a different heffalump. It's just magic.